Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in dark, I walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed.
All right, let's take a look at the homework from yesterday, problems 14 through 18. We got our diamond problems. Remember, when you're when you're doing the diamond problems, these are your two numbers on the outside, and you multiply them together to give you the product on the top, and you add them together to get the sum on the bottom. In a situation like A, you've been given the two numbers, so we have to go through and do the multiplication and do the addition. In problems like B, you're given some of the numbers and you have to use algebraic reasoning to figure out the other. So what would you add to 2/5 to give you 11/15? Well, you do a subtraction, and then that will give you this number, which you then can multiply to give you the number on the top. So I'll do the first one, and maybe I'll do A and B. And if you have questions for C or D, let me know, and I will work those out for you as well. Okay, so first off, I'm going to add these two numbers together. 1 1/5 is the same as 6/5 plus 3/4, and looks like your common denominator is going to be 20. So I'm just going to do the coat of arms. I'm going to multiply 4 times 6 is 24, 5 times 3 is 15, and then the common denominator is going to be 20s. So when you add those together, you get 39 over 20. And that's a terrible 39. But 39 over 20 is the same as 1 and 19/20. Now we'll multiply them together. To multiply them, once again, you need to have that as an improper fraction, and then 3/4 on the top here. You multiply straight across, you get 18 over 20, and that simplifies down to 9/10. So now how do we solve this? Well, it's going to be 2/5 plus something is going to give you 11/15. So I think what we need to do is change that so it's got 15 for the denominator, so that becomes 6/15 plus something else over 15 is going to give you 11/15. And so now instead of subtracting 11 or 6/15 from 11/15, now just take 11 minus 6, and that's 5. So that's got to be 5/15, which simplifies down to 1/3. So that's the number right there is going to be 1/3. Now let's multiply. 2 times 1 is 2, and 5 times 3 is 15, and that cannot be simplified, so we'll just leave it as it is. So once again, if you want me to work through these, one thing to be aware of here is that when you're multiplying two negatives together, you get a positive answer. When you add two negative numbers together, you get a negative answer. So add the numbers and then keep the sign. Here you're going to multiply and it just becomes a positive. Here, a positive times a negative gives you a negative answer. And when you are adding two numbers that have different signs, you are going to subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. And since 2/3 is bigger than 1/3, your answer has got to be a negative. Here we are just solving equations, combining like terms. I guess the first thing I would do here is subtract 3x's from each side. And then I'd also subtract 20 from each side. So these cancel out, and 5x minus 3x is 2x. These cancel out, and 4 minus 20 is -16. So what do you multiply times 2 to give you -16? Divide each side by 2. -16 divided by 2 is -8. Pretty much the same process as we go. Take away 3x's from each side, add 4 to each side. What do you multiply times 4 to give you 12? It has to be 3. And here we take away an x from each side and take away 6 from each side. And that's where it's going to be the trickiest, because you got to remember -9 minus 6 is the same as -9 plus a -6. That's how you end up with -15 for C. Here we've got, what do we have here? Percent change. Mariana and Felix were in science class and were using a test kit to measure the amount of calcium in milk. They measured the amount of calcium in 1 cup of milk 10 times, and this was their average, their mean amount of calcium. They looked up the amount of calcium that is typically in milk and found that it's usually 290 milligrams instead of 294.6 milligrams. So percent error finds the difference between the actual value and the measured value and compares the differences to the actual percentage. Find the percent error for their measurement. Okay, so how much was the change? Remember, when you're finding percent change, you got to find the amount of the change. So we're going to take the 294.6, take away the 290, and that means that the amount of difference, the amount of change was 4.6 grams. When we're finding percent change, we always put the original amount on the bottom. And so I guess that would be the question here is which one is the original and which one is the new. The original has to be the 2.94 because we're trying to figure out how much different is this from that. So it went from this to that. So we're going to put 294 in the denominator. Once you solve this using cross multiplication or using a giant 1, you get this for an answer, which rounds up to 1.6. I guess you could have said 1.56% error. Actually, I'm kind of curious about that. Let me do that cross multiplication there and see what we get. You get 294.6x is now equal to 460. So when I take 460 and I divide it by 294.6, oh, see, it ends up, yeah. It's going to round either 1.56 or it's going to round to 1.6. So I rounded it up to 1.6. Just do the right thing. Yeah, that rounds up to 1.6. All right. If 5 songs can be downloaded for $6, what's the cost of 7 songs? Well, this is proportional reasoning because if you don't download any songs, you're not going to spend any money. And each song should cost the same amount. So you could actually set this up as a price per song. And what is 6 divided by 5? 6 divided by 5 is at 1.2. Yeah, so that means it's $1.20 per song. And if you wanted to take that unit rate and now multiply that times 7 songs, that is one way to solve the problem. Or you could just do cross multiplication here. Let me move these guys out of the way. You can do cross multiplying, so 5x is equal to 42, and I bet you anything that 42 divided by 5 is also going to give you 8.4. 42 divided by 5, 8.4, which means $8.40 for 7 songs. And I think this is the last problem, probability problems. Let's go ahead and highlight what we got there. We've got 6 red, 4 blue, 3 white, and 7 green marbles for a total of 20 marbles in the bag. If he draws 1 marble, replaces it, and then draws another, find these probabilities. Okay, so you're going to pull out a red. And how many reds are in there? 6 reds. So that is 6 out of 20, which is the same as 3 out of 10, correct? So if you're going to pull out a red and then pull out a red again, that is a very rare thing to have happen. So that means you're going to multiply these together and your probability should go down. So your probability is 3 out of 10, which is a 30% chance of just pulling a red the first time. But the chances of you pulling another red after the first one, well, that's going to be 30% times 30%, which gives you 9 over 100, which becomes 9%. The probability of pulling out a not white, so that would be 17 out of 20, and then pulling out a green, which would be 7 out of 20. Well, what's 7 times 17? 7 times 17 is 119, and 20 times 20 is 400. So now to convert that to a percent, what do we have here? Let's get rid of that. Let's take 119 over 400 and figure out what is that out of 100. Well, looks like we just divide this by 4 to give us that. So I bet you 119 divided by 4 is going to give us 29.75. Let's see. Oh, I had it right there. 119 divided by 4, 29.75. That's your percent right there. The probability of getting a blue or a white. Oh, no, blue or white, and then get a red. Okay, so the blue or white implies you're going to add these together for the first one. So the blue or white is 7 out of 20, right? Because blues or whites win, so you got 7 winners there. That's 7 out of 20. And then a red immediately after that is going to be a 6 out of 20. So this ends up being 42 out of 400, which becomes 21 out of 200. And I think that ends up being our simplest version of it. Make that a percent. 21 out of 200 is equivalent to half of 21 over 100. Half of 21 is 11.5, so that would be 11.5%. And now find the answer for part A above if he does not replace the marble. So remember, getting a red was 6 out of 20, which simplified down to 3 over 10. Then, well, no, actually, let's leave it how it was. Let's leave it as 6 over 20. Because after you did that, you did not put the marble back in. So now you've got 5 reds and 19 marbles. So now you multiply straight across and you get 30 out of 380, which dividing the top and bottom by 10 becomes 3 out of 38. And then to change that to its percent, I'm just going to go ahead and do the division. 3 divided by 38 is 0.078, 0.078, blah, blah, blah. And now if we want to change that to a percent, that's going to be like 0.08. And 800ths literally means 8%. So 7.9 to 8%, somewhere in there, is going to be the percent chance of getting 2 reds in a row when you take the first red out and you don't replace it. So I think that's it for our homework. All right, so I cannot stress enough the importance. Continue doing your homework, please. There are so many concepts that we learn in 7th grade, and your homework is your opportunity to continue practicing those concepts that we learned early in the year, as well as practicing what we've been learning in our most recent lessons. So keep at it, keep showing your work, keep making your corrections. All of this is going to pay off tremendously when you get to high school and you know all of this frontwards and backwards. It's going to make it so much easier to understand the new lessons when you get into 8th grade and when you get into high school. All right, take care.
Hey, feeling good, like I should.